Let me share an interesting conversation I had with a young esthetician who did a facial treatment for me during the weekend. Well, when I had this facial treatment in the middle of the time, and then the lady suddenly asked me a question, very seriously. Will you migrate to Canada? And I said, why? Out of the blue, you know. And then she said, well, you know, Canada has recently opened its door wider. And then as soon as you have some work experience, you can go. And then I said, well, I don't have this plan, seriously. And then I asked her why she was thinking about this. And then she said, well, you know what? I lost 1/3 of my customers just within the past few months. And then I was pretty shocked, you know, to hear that, because the migration has impact on this small business. And then she said, you know what? Even my customers who have gone to Canada and asked me to go there and set up a beauty parlor so that they can have facial treatments. I said, are you serious? She said, yes, because many of them have gone to Canada and then they don't have anywhere to go for facial treatment. Well, what I'm trying to say is the situation of brain drains have widened quite, substantially and seriously. And in October last year, Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee said 140,000 people left Hong Kong for good. And then last month, he gave a new figure. He was saying 200,000 people have left Hong Kong just within a short period of time, in the past several years. And then at the same time, he's done a lot to bring in talents, launching a total of 7 talent schemes, with the latest in December. But then it only brought in 50,000 people. So it looks, the gap is pretty big. So how can Hong Kong, get through the economic recovery with this such a shortfall in talents? So I would like to start the conversation with Richard, because Mercer has done quite some research and study. So how dire the manpower shortages in Hong Kong is?
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Denise. Good morning, everybody, and thanks to SCMP and everybody else here. I've already made some great contacts at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and I want to add Mercer to that list of organisations that are collaborating with you guys as well. I was waiting for the M. It was a bit embarrassing when Mercer wasn't there, so rest assured we'll come there. To your question, Denise, I think dire is a very strong word. I think it's challenging. You asked me for some stats earlier. I've got some of my own. I think the most disturbing one I saw was like 4,000 teachers have left their jobs. Hong Kong has its lowest workforce since 2018. And you mentioned some of the things that are happening to bring in new people as well. I think I'm here both as an employer and as somebody that provides advice to employers, but probably the most insight is from us as an employer, because we're facing challenges as well. We had the biggest turnover we've had since I've been at Mercer for 5 years last year, and for similar reasons to your beautician. Out of the people that left, despite my advices to them, most of them went to the UK. At some point, so many people were going to the UK, I was thinking of running seminars about why it's not a good idea to live in the UK. Yeah. Having lived there for 40 years, and made the choice to come to Hong Kong. And believe me, in every aspect, Hong Kong, from a business perspective, from a society perspective, is a much better place to live. I'm sure we'll get on some of the solutions that Mercer offer and everybody else can offer, and making companies fit for the future of the work, but I won't hog the conversation, and I'll pass on to my fellow panelists to give their views as well.
So Adele, from the company perspective, so what happens with your company?
Actually, sometimes when we talk, we have a discussion with other HR friends, it's quite interesting that it seems there's a lot of people living in Hong Kong, but sometimes we also hear the news about the layoff plan of some of the organization, and the unemployment rate is relatively low. The talent war is ongoing. So it seems people are still moving around, but we just have no idea where all these people has gone. So for us, of course, as an organization that we have serious manpower shortage, is create a big issue. We are not we are not able to find the right talent in the market, or even if we identify the right talent, the salary is just crazily high. It's not only about budget, actually. It's caused a lot of internal issue, the internal conflict about the package alignment within the organization. So what we can do is just to pay more, to have this very aggressive recruitment strategies, and at the same time try to reskill and upskill our talent. But it's a very big issue for us.
Right, so, I mean, how serious it is? I mean, do you have any figures to show, the turnover rate, of your company, or?
I think I can try to explain in three angles. First, the turnover rate is really serious. Of course, double digit, around 20 or 30 something. It's really, I think it's on a increasing trend. So
it's the most serious in recent years?
Especially for the young people, yeah, and the middle level. So it is quite serious. And also, it's very hard to find replacement. And even if we find a replacement, when other candidate before they join, we may lose them because that they just reject offer, they some have another engagement.
Yeah, I mean, just a sort of anecdotal story which talks about the sort of the knock-on effect of not enough talent, in that we recruited a relatively junior person from an insurance company at a salary increase of 20% because we needed to do that to attract her across. Before she'd finished her probation, she went back to the insurance company for the same job at another 30%. So within 2 months, she'd got a 50% salary rise, and that's because people are desperate to. They need the talent to do the jobs, and it's the sort of opportunity cost is so much greater if those people don't come to your organisation, and that's what happens when you don't have enough people in the job market.
Right. What a good fortune for Labour for now. So, Joanna, do you want to shed some light on this?
I think one of the things I'd like to say is that those of us from Hong Kong who've been here for many years, we know how resilient Hong Kong is. We have been through so many transformations over the years, and we do get through them, and we actually end up being stronger. And I think to your point about, would you rather be in the UK or Hong Kong? Well, people were clapping when you said that. And I think there's also been a sort of post-COVID bounce where people just were desperate to travel. But now that they've got that out of their system, or they're getting that out of their system, people are also coming back to Hong Kong. And really, I think what's needed now, and what we need to look at as employers, as educators, is how to engage people, how to re-engage people at school, at university, in their jobs, at work. Where are we going? What's the future? What does the future look like for me as an individual, and what does it look like for Hong Kong? And do I have a future here? I think that's, we need to be sort of looking bigger picture. And of course, it's a daily struggle when you're running a business to actually have enough staff to carry out the operations. But I think it's also very important in parallel to be strategizing for the future, because we know the future will be bright for Hong Kong. I'm very positive in that way.
Right. So, I mean, the government has done quite a lot in trying to bring in talents, like they increase the ratio of non-local students in universities, and then they bring in import labor for transportation, construction sector, and aviation. But I think, I want to go back to a point that you two raised, previously, that to find the right people is the most important. It's not just bringing anyone. So, I mean, how this can be done to make sure that you find the right people? Or do any one of you want to share about this?
Can we start with young people?
Yeah, of course, certainly. Yeah.
Start at the beginning?
Certainly.
I mean, I think it really does start with creating the right pipeline. We need young people who are going to be moving into these jobs, and it starts with education, and obviously through university and training. And Mr. C said earlier about the importance of communication skills and so-called soft skills. Hong Kong people are smart, academically smart. I mean, in the PISA scores, the program for international student assessment scores, we always rank top of the chart. You know, I think we're 4th at the moment for reading and maths, and I think we're 7th for science, etc. You know, on a global scale, Hong Kong young people are very smart. But how do you round that out? How do you create all-rounders who can actually offer value to the companies that they're going to be working for? And I think the key change now is that we really need to work towards more cognitive diversity. It's not about creating young people who are all the same and who are all super smart and trying to get into the same jobs as we've always done. It's actually about young people who think differently. And that's quite a challenge for our current education system, because our education system right now is not really created to generate young people who think differently. I was talking to some of the CU professors earlier at breakfast, and we were talking about why don't people speak in lectures? Why don't they ask questions? Why is it so silent? And maybe, yes, it's partly cultural, but you know, we can't use culture as a reason not to fully engage in a learning process.
So this means, you know, it needs an overhaul to the education system, right?
Absolutely. Or definitely, and I'm really happy to hear the Secretary for Education talk about that, because it's just as important to nurture those other skills as it is to get good grades.
Right.
No, I was just going to add, I mean, as a sort of recipient of people from universities, because we're not in the sexiest profession, so insurance broking and, you know, what Mercer do is not, it's not biotech, it's not fintech, it's not, you know, Big Four consulting. The expectations of the graduates that come to us far exceed what we can deliver. So, you know, and obviously we've got to change to make that happen. But there does seem to be a gap in sort of basic skills. I've got 2 daughters who are 26 and 22. They've just entered the job market. And they come to me with like very, very basic questions about how the world works, let alone how it works in the job market. And I don't think the education system does exactly what it's supposed to do, to make sure that people are, you know, financially savvy, technologically savvy, understand how business works, and understand what works in business as well.
Right.
So.
Right. So what's your advice to these young people?
Well, it's advice. I mean, I think one of the things, I mean, it's great to see the CUHK, you know, collaborative initiatives in that, you know, education establishments working closer with business, so they understand exactly what, you know, we're looking for from students. Yeah, and we're more than happy to, I mean, local grown talent and talent we can bring through the companies are a lot cheaper than talent brought in either from other organisations in Hong Kong or other organisations from around the world. So, you know, it's the most cost efficient and the best way to do it as well, and people are more loyal if they've come through the organisation.
Right. So I think, you know, to increase the talents in Hong Kong, there are 2 major ways. First, it can be like retaining the existing staff, and the second thing is through bringing in from overseas or even increasing the supply from the education system. So how about we go through, you know, how we can better retain talents first? Adele? Yeah.
Actually, I think, of course, the talent war is very hard. Salary may be one of the points that can help us to retain the talent, but it's a quite short term. Actually, another big issue for us, I think, is about the mindset of our people. As we have shared, in recent career coaching session, it's quite common that we will touch on the point about leaving Hong Kong. So honestly, we don't think everyone will leave Hong Kong, but it means that it seems leaving Hong Kong become one of the options in mind, which means instead of focus on long-term career development, our people may prefer to have more immediate opportunity or shorter-term career development. So organizations need to change their strategies to retain our people. We need to provide some immediate engagement or opportunity for our, especially the young talent. So what we can do for Hong Kong Broadband, we have our core purpose called Make Our Home a Better Place to Live. So what we can do is try to create a sense of purpose for our people. We try to empower them to make them believe they're actually doing something impactful. We want to engage them in some meaningful project or purposeful initiative, and we want to regard themselves as one of the key contributor of the company's success. I think that's very important, because if our team can believe that or regard themselves as an integrated part of the success, this is actually how to create a sense of connection with the organization And it is also create a sense of contribution, achievement, which is actually, for us, is the best retention strategies.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think words like purpose, and we talk about ESG and DEI, there's so many catchphrases out there. And I think what's really important is that we can't just use them as checkboxes. We actually, as business leaders, as employees, we have to believe in them. We actually have to not just talk about them, but support them. And it comes back to this element of engagement. This is what keeps the companies sticky and keeps employees working for them. And I think there is a lot of talk about it. People think that, oh, well, if I say we have a purpose, then everyone's going to rally behind it. That's not good enough. It actually has to come from top down, bottom up, everywhere, and really build that sense that we're working for this company for a true reason.
Right, you seem to have solutions.
It was good that I looked
The
that
way
way.
you look.
Okay, that's good. Well, this is sort of what we do. And it's interesting, Hong Kong Broadband doing all the right things, obviously. But we see so many companies that don't do the basics and then wonder why there's rapid turnover, there's no engagement within the organisation. And the basics are, why not ask all your employees, what they're valuing at the moment, what their issues are, how they look at the benefit programme, what they struggle with at work, are they stressed, what's your work from home policy, all of these things. Then once you've asked everybody, then you can design a program which is tailored around your employees. And this sort of, when I entered the workplace, it was a one-size-fits-all model. Now, not only multi-generational, but also sort of multi-lifestyle. People go through different phases within their lives, even through different generations. So we've done research on making sure that caregivers, which is a big thing in Hong Kong, people that sort of sandwich generation that are looking after their parents and then looking after their children, making sure they're cared for at work. The unwell, the well, the mentally well, the physically unwell as well. All of these different categories, LGBTQ plus, are all sort of catered for. And then once you've done all of that, at least you've got first of all, you've got a baseline. So any improvements you can prove to whoever that you're doing a good job, and those metrics are there. And then things around health and well-being as well, and using a data-driven approach to make sure that all the causes of sort of angst or high attrition within your organisation are directly attacked and with proper solutions. And it's, as you say, it's not just lip service. You have to lead from the front, and making sure that this is an ongoing process. It's not just a once and done. It's year after year after a year, and hopefully things will get better within your organisation once you put all these things into place.
Right, but the downside risk is, you let them say something that the company may not be able to deliver.
Well, so now that's a very good point, and that comes down to the design of the engagement survey, because obviously would you like to have all these benefits is not one of the questions that is on there. Yeah.
I think the key thing is that employees want to be heard, and they want to feel that people are listening to them. And of course you can't do everything, but it's all about transparency. It's about we're working together towards certain goals. I know HKBN is very strong on transparency, which is a great thing. This sort of old system of very patriarchal or autocratic top-down management is on the way out. It's not sustainable to run a business like that. And listening to young people and what they have to say, we have to listen to them, because they know, they understand tech. The old guys at the top, the old people at the top don't actually understand all that stuff, and they need people who are coming up the ranks, who actually live and breathe this, because if they live and breathe it, their customers will be living and breathing it. And these are the ways that companies are going to be sustainable for the future. So you have to create that model where everybody's voice is important. And I think when if you can create that model, and it takes time, some of these huge companies are, it takes time for them to actually come around to this way of thinking. I think that in itself is very powerful. We know that money is not the most important motivator for a successful career. All the research says so. So if money isn't the most important, then what is? Maybe we need to rethink that question right now.
Right. So, with Hong Kong Broadband, so Adele, what's the most important thing that the staff is asking within your company, other than money?
Money is always number one, I think. But of course, I think as a retention, there's a lot of different element inside that when we are trying to do the retention offer or something. One of the things that our talent that usually we request is flexibility. I think that's very, very important, especially for the young talent. Sometimes when we're doing the recruitment, when we are trying to discuss the offer, the first thing they ask is about what is the working pattern here. Do you have like flexi work or what is the working pattern? So actually, I think that is very important, especially for the young culture. This is already one of the foundation for nowadays the work. Yeah.
I mean, just to back that up, so 4 out of 10 employees globally would not take a role if there was no flexibility in it, according to our Global Talent Trends survey.
Wow.
And I think if you'd gone back 4 or 5 years, that would nobody even realised that was a possibility. But now people have enjoyed that flexibility, and it's difficult to go back.
Absolutely. When we have some staff in the office who don't come to office very often as well. Anyhow, I mean the quickest way to increase the manpower situation is through technology, and we've seen the power of ChatGPT or AI. So how does this technology shape the entire market? Does it create or kill jobs?
It's me, is it? I mean, I'm no AI specialist, but if you look at some of the stats, then Goldman Sachs said that 300 million jobs would disappear by 2030. A quarter of all jobs would disappear with AI. As mentioned earlier, Hong Kong is really susceptible to that. But I think, like anything, things evolve. The job market and technology is constantly moving. I mean, and sort of anecdotally, even now within my organisation, people are using ChatGPT. I'm receiving emails now that are complex, imperfect English to people that used to struggle to.
It's a bit abnormal, isn't it?
But it's great. It's great, and the bar is raised. But it's a difficult one to countenance. Yeah.
I think from an education point of view, ChatGPT is really going to force us to change the way that we look at educating our children and our young people. Because, anyone can be an expert at anything now. The important thing is to tell the difference between fake and real, to interpret the findings, to analyze, to use the information to create new outcomes. That's where the value is going to come from humans. So how do you instill those skills and those traits in young people? It needs to, the earlier you start anything, the easier it's going to be. And then eventually, hopefully, we'll use AI or ChatGPT to do all the boring things, and then we can do the fun things, which is the analysis and the brainstorming and the innovation.
Yeah, I think honestly at this moment, only at this moment, we don't see a big impact for all this digitalization to impact the job at our company. But I do think there is a behavior change or expectation change. Thanks for ChatGPT. So now everyone have their best AI buddies or assistant when they're doing the work. So for us, I think the expectation is adaptability of technology is a must. We want our people to really embrace the technology and be sensitive to the technology trend. I think that is important, so that we want them to really leverage this technology to how to enhance their work, so that they can free up some of their capacity to do some more value-added or more strategic job. So I think when we are trying to do some project, of course, the technology will be put into one of the elements that already as one of the partner or one of the mixture of this task force. So this is very important element. Although at this moment, not big impact, but we have to change, otherwise we cannot survive.
Just a quick anecdote. I was talking to a professor at the University of Warwick, and I said to them, how do you, as a university, cope when students are handing in essays that may have been written by robots? And they said, well, actually, you don't fight it, you actually accept it. So they will set assignments which are, use ChatGPT to write an essay about this, but then it's the analysis of it is where the students are going to get their marks. So they just assume that people will use all of the tools at their disposal. That's not the part that's worthy of the marking, it's the analysis side.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the jobs, for my own self as well as for everybody else. Jobs which are secure post sort of AI and jobs which are at risk. And jobs at risk are the sort of obvious ones, sort of customer service, sort of retail, interestingly accountants as well. But jobs that are secure, probably for a lot of the audience, teachers, because of the nuance required to teach. HR professionals because of the broad nature of the role itself, and also directors, CEOs as well. So and lawyers actually. Yeah. So, yeah, 'cause everything with the focus is on soft skills and nuance and relationships.
I heard someone say reporters, right? But let me share the experience of using ChatGPT in the newsroom. So at one time, it was like 2 months ago, we were writing a story to tell the differences of writing by a human, a real-life reporter, and also through GPT. And it was amazing that it took the reporter like 2 days to do research, to find the right people to talk about the subject, and then to write the story. And then the ChatGPT just generated it within 3 minutes. Of course, it's so fast, and then the reporter was scared because he feared that he would lose the job. He would be redundant. But then when we compare the two stories, some big differences we found. So the one generated from the ChatGPT container is like a perfect story. It's too good to be true. Why? Because it's got all the voices you need. And then it even created someone. It's a professor, whatever, from Hong Kong U. And then we try, and then says something very authoritative. And then we try to check this person. It's non-existent. You cannot find this person within this Hong Kong University. And then this is not the only person non-existent in the story, and a couple of more that we could not find in real world. So this is a huge question. How we gatekeep content, how we can prove, just like what Joanna just said, students can verify, and analyze, their ChatGPT story, whether it's true or not. This is the most important skills, I think.
I think it's very confusing for us who are parents, because we used to have traditional pathways: be a doctor, be an accountant, be a lawyer, be safe, be secure. I don't think we can say that anymore. We really can't. We have to actually bring up our children in a different way to be much more flexible, much more open-minded, and really embracing all sorts of skills, because we actually don't know which skills in our toolbox we're going to need. So we need to create a much broader toolbox.
Right. So we have just short time before we open the floor for questions. So would you like to comment anything about digitalization on job market?
Only to re-emphasise what's been said, really, and that I think agility is a major strength going forward.
Right.
That sort of growth mindset. Job for life is probably not a job for life anymore. So the more you can embrace that, the more you embrace change, learning,
right,
then you'll be better prepared for what's coming.
Right. Okay.
I think talking about culture is quite an interesting thing to talk about in this kind of environment, because we're in Hong Kong, but we're an international community, but we still have very traditional ways of working in many of our companies. We have strict hierarchies still sometimes. Young people are too scared to say things to older people. A more junior person won't speak to a senior person. But it has to work both ways. I think people at leadership level really need to demonstrate that they are open to change, and that they are open to feedback and open to criticism even. And it's difficult, especially if you've come up through a system where you were the junior person once and now you're the boss, and so you act like a boss, whatever that means. I think we really have to create these sort of much more open networks where people feel safe. They feel psychologically safe to speak up and say, actually, this isn't working for me. A lot of companies spend huge amounts of money on their graduate training schemes, and they last 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. And you have to jump through so many hoops to even be employed on one of these schemes. But then the attrition rate is really high. A lot of these are supposed to be the brightest, the best and the brightest young people going into the workforce, and yet so many of them leave during the program or after the program. So why? What's happening there? Where's the mismatch? Some of the people I've spoken to say that the job was not what they expected. So then you need to look at expectations and why those expectations not being met. And maybe the expectations were unreasonable, or maybe they were just words, and that actually the pathway is not truly there.
Right.
Yeah, actually, I want to add one point. So I think as an employer, we have to change ourselves as well, not only try to change the candidate, we have to change ourselves as well. I want to echo one point about diversity, because actually diversity for us is like the blue ocean. It's actually how organizations to tap into a wider pool of candidates that we may have overlooked before. So for Hong Kong broadband, what we have to try is to extend our female candidate pool in the past. We also have our 3-year milestone plan or KPI for gender diversity, especially for the technical team. I think that is very important. Of course, this is very challenging as well, because in terms of the business nature, many people still think engineer or data center is only the world for men. So what we really have to do is to change ourselves, to change our mindset. We try to rebrand some of the traditional roles, say for example, the network engineer to the broadband ambassador. We also try to provide more flexibility for this job, like a half-day work for working mother, flexible working location, flexible working hours. And we also try to partner with some of our retail partners so that to enable our direct sales or engineer to store some of their gear and tools in their retail shop. So they don't need to carry the heavy stuff with them all day. I think that one is very important. We need to change ourselves. Although it is very challenging for us to do the gender diversity. But what we have to do is because we cannot find the right talent in the market, we need to change ourselves to open the blue ocean.
Now, just sort of picking up on something Joanna said about the hierarchical nature of some organisations. I think lots of organisations are looking at that now, starting with the physical space. So, complete agile working, no big corner office, whoever you are, the flexibility of working. And also the non-hierarchical nature of benefits as well. So this concept of everybody has an equal right to benefits, whoever you are, and flipping the pyramid so that the higher earnings are actually subsidising and paying for benefits for all, and the less fortunate as well. I mean, there's a lot of work being done on that.
Just to pick up on your point of diversity as well, I mean, I always think it's really strange that in Hong Kong, women leave the workforce because their child has gone into primary 1 and they have to help with homework. I mean, these are women at the
Parents are the
prime.
busiest people in school.
But I think, if you have an education system where women feel that they have to leave the workforce to help their children with their homework, there's something wrong there. I mean, because we're taking smart women out of the workforce and we need them in the workforce. And also we know that, equal numbers of women are employed at the beginning of the careers, but they also drop out along the way, and then we don't have enough women in leadership. And it's because of reasons like this. So I think everything is very entwined, it's complicated, but you start with the education and then you move into the workforce, and then you look at the young people, and then you look at people working their ways up to senior leadership. It's all connected.
So when we talk about diversity, and there's a question from the floor that talk about this subject. So the question is, despite the talent shortage, companies seem to be slow in widening their pools, such as ethnic minorities and people with disabilities. How would you respond to that? So it's now talking about ethnic minorities and people with disabilities.
I mean, certainly from what we see, that is not the case. Companies are looking for talent from all parts of the community and provide people with an equal opportunity. So, and lots of our conversations are about how they get access to that kind of talent more than is currently available. So.
I think people tend to hire in their own image. You feel comfortable with people like you. So it tends to be a sort of natural instinct to hire people that look like you, sound like you, think like you. That's, as I said at the beginning, what we need is cognitive diversity. We need these people who think different, look different, behave different, etc. I think in a way, it's not the right way, but I think because we have a talent shortage, this is an opportunity now, right? This is the time when people can actually really step into these roles and prove themselves, and they shouldn't have to prove themselves, but I think it is an actual opportunity that we can take advantage of.
Right. And then the next question is, what should companies do with workers who are close to retirement, whose jobs can be mostly replaced by AI?
I think not only about because of retirement, actually, we need to reskill and upskill all our talent so as to support the transforming business that is important. So what we have to do is to really provide support and training for these people so that they can make themselves remain competitive in this job market. I think that is important.
I mean, I think studies would show that retirement is not good for you. sort of a complete stop of retirement is not good for anybody. So, sort of a lessening of duties, going part-time, doing project work, doing anything you can just to keep both the body and mind active are worthwhile. So if AI gives the opportunity to phase people into retirement, then that's a great way of doing that.
Right. Oh, that's a good question, relevant to you, Richard. Question from a recent returner from UK to Hong Kong. The UK has seen record vacancies over recent years, and what employers realize is not just money, but a happy, motivating workplace that matters. Do we have enough to measure happiness and engagement?
Well, first of all, welcome back, whoever you are. So, I mean, I'd obviously say that companies don't do that because that's a lot of the stuff that we do, and I think it's really important. Adele mentioned that money doesn't solve everything, and all the studies show that you give people a pay rise to overcome a short-term woe, then they very quickly sort of forget about that, and it's everything else within the work environment that makes a difference. And there are lots of tools around which can give a very detailed understanding of all different categories of somebody's engagement and happiness. And if you do that once, then you've got a baseline, and then if you carry on doing that, you can see which areas to improve, where things are going badly and where things are going well, and work on those on a year-by-year basis. So, yeah.
I think it's that feeling of autonomy. We mentioned earlier about flexibility. You talked about flexibility and how important that is. It's that feeling that I want to be here and I have autonomy over my role. And yes, I need to work, I need to collaborate with my colleagues to create the best outcomes for the team, for the company, etc. But I also have some say over what I'm doing. That's the environment that I think employers need to create. And that's what makes the difference. For people who might want to come back and work for those companies or not, or who might leave for another company.
Right. Yeah, for us as an organization, I think the best way to measure happiness is actually about the turnover rate. So if people stay, I think it means something. If people leave, it also means something. So what we have to do is sometimes we see some of the team had relatively higher turnover rate than the others. So we always try to understand what happened. We have conversation with the leaders. I think that is important.
See. Okay, the next question, a bit relevant. So are Hong Kong employers doing enough to provide more work-life balance opportunities, such as hybrid and reduced hours, working to create more attractive value propositions?
Was that written by
reduce
somebody?
Work hours in Hong Kong? Is it possible?
I mean, I think it's on every Hong Kong employer's agenda. I came here 10 years ago, and most people wouldn't speak about anything about that. It was just a lot of lip surface. Companies spend a lot of money working on making sure that employees they've got an attractive value proposition, because quite honestly, in the Hong Kong job market now, if you haven't got that, then it's very difficult to attract and certainly to retain employees. So, work-life balance is a relatively recent concept as well, but it's one which is here and now, and it's a reality we have to deal with. That people do want a challenging, rewarding, engaging workplace, as well as not having to work all the time.
Right, okay.
Yeah, actually, for us, I think work-life balance is about choices. So at HKBN, we don't have work-life balance, but we embrace life-work priorities. What I mean is that because we believe everyone is on different life stage, some of them maybe they have family, they have children that they need to take care of the examination, so they may have different life stage. So some people may prefer to be more aggressive on their career. They want to have better career journey in their life, but some of the people, maybe they want to spend more time with their friends or family. So I think the work-life balance, or we call it life-work priority, is a matter of choice. If the employer can provide a choice to the employee, is critical.
It's also the transparency. It's explaining why we have to do certain things. I think the division between employers and employees is really, you really have to bring people together and understand. It's not just, I'm making you work these hours, so get on with it. It's actually, we have just been through really tough times with COVID. The company has been struggling. We have these issues. We have, some successes, but some failures, etc. How do we work together to solve these? I think that's where you need to bring people together. It requires a very special kind of leadership to do that. But that's where people then feel part of the team, rather than, it's just a job, and I don't have enough work-life balance. They need to be fully engaged.
Right. Because of time, we are running out of precious time. So before we wrap up this discussion, I would like to ask each of you to come up with a word to describe today's discussion so far and elaborate a little bit about the choice of your word. I'm going to start with Adele.
Can I use 2 words? Because
Okay.
for me, I think one of the best reflection in the past few years is I need to keep unlearning and relearning. Because it seemed that uncertain become a norm in the past few years. So what we can do is to be agile and keep unlearn ourselves and relearn again so that we can cope with all the changes.
Agile, being agile. Yeah. Right.
I think my word's connected to your word. My word is curiosity. Maintain that curiosity, or as educators, we need to instill curiosity. Children are born curious. We need to make sure it's not knocked out of them at school, because we want our children to want to learn, and to want to learn more, and to want to learn differently, and keep that trait as they progress, rather than having them just, take an exam, get the next certificate, do the next step that's expected of me, get the job that's expected of me. Keep our minds open and curious.
Right.
I'm going to steal a word that I heard Joanna use earlier, and that is resilience. And that if there's one thing that Hong Kong has been in the past and is in the future and is now, is resilient. And I think we will get through this. Hong Kong's had the worst time it's had in a long time.
Right.
But if I was to choose another word like Adele, I'd use hope as well, because I'm very hopeful for the future of this wonderful place.
I'm very happy that, to hear at being agile, curiosity, and then transparency, right? No, sorry.
Resilience.
Resilience. Because all these are our SMP's values. Sorry. Well, I have to deal with one more question. Very important question from a very important VIP. And then the question is, a major driving force for human beings is ownership. For example, home ownership, personal property. So I think this is also true for occupations. How do employers generate an ecosystem that will provide employees with a sense of ownership? This is from our Professor Rocky Dunn.
Okay, I'll have a go at that one. One of the questions we ask on our employee engagement survey is, are you proud to work for your organisation? And I think if you're proud to work for the organisation, that does give you a sense of your personal and collective ownership. So I think that's the one way to do that.
Yeah, I think as shared earlier, I think, a sense of ownership or a sense of purpose is important. And you can also see actually our title, not only me, actually a lot of our managers also have this title called co-owner. Because we are not only an employer of the company, we believe we can make changes and create impact. That is important.
Right.
Feeling heard, feeling safe to speak up and share what I truly believe, and have someone listen to me, even if they don't agree with me, but have that open dialogue. And I think, the transparency, actually know what's happening in this organization that I'm working for, and the autonomy, the feeling of autonomy.
Thank you so much for all these lively discussions. And over to you, James. Thank you very much.